Well, better luck next year, buddy.
Hello friendos, this is Chain, welcoming you back to Chain of Commander. For today's episode, I figure, well, at this point we're mostly familiar with commander damage, right? That if an individual commander did 21 points of combat damage to a player, that player is eliminated immediately, regardless of how much life they have or what their spore state might be. Well, there are a few commanders that take that idea and just take it a step further with built-in ways to really kind of eliminate a player regardless of how much damage they're doing. So I figure for today, we can go over the 3 legendary creatures that have built-in player elimination conditions. So regardless, like I said, regardless of how much life total you have, they're all like bam, 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 and the player's dead. Now, if any of these decks end up being something that you want to consider building, definitely consider using our TCG Player affiliate link down in the description below. Won't cost you a single cent more. Will help out the channel though, so I'd greatly appreciate that. No, that said, let's get in to these 3 deadly machines. The first one I want to focus on here is a Thamesis All-Seeing. This is from Core Set 2020. It's 3 blue, blue, blue. For a 4/5 legendary creature, Sphinx. Being a Sphinx, it has flying. It has an activated ability of 2 and a blue and tapping it, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Then it has this nice little wall of text at the bottom of it. Whenever a Thamesis All-Seeing does damage to an opponent, you may reveal your hand. If cards with at least 6 different converted mana costs are revealed this way, that player loses the game. Just poof, they are on out of here. So, how do we take advantage of this ability here to automatically eliminate a player from the game? Well, for Thamesis, you will want to make sure that your curve is pretty even all the way into the higher CMCs. So not necessarily like a flat line curve, but it's going to be a lot more shallow than an average curve of a deck where you see mostly 2 to 3 drops and then very few as you go down the line. You're going to have a little bit more steady of a curve going down. If you're watching at home, it'll be more like this way. So, you're going to have to focus on getting a couple playable large CMC spells. So I'm not necessarily talking like every high CMC spell needs to be things like Expropriate, which is a 10-drop blue spell. Even though Expropriate is a really good spell, there are ways that you can hedge this whole big CMC idea without needing to pay big CMC spells. Things that can skirt their CMC costs like Delve, like Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise, are great ways to fill those high CMC slots while effectively having spells that you're going to be casting for a lot less. Also, those split cards, like Commit to Memory, one of my favorite cards, is a 10 CMC spell in hand, even though their 2 halves are 4 and 6 respectively. So, once again, a way to get a nice high CMC number in your hand while playing a much lower CMC spell. You're also going to be in blue, so you'll be able to filter through your deck pretty nicely. Thamesis has a built-in filter ability of drawing 2 and then discarding 1, but you can also be playing things like Search for Escanta to set up your draws, or Anticipate to look at the top 3 cards and pick one you need. And in the same vein, the other cantrips like Preordain and Ponder can all help you find the cards you need to help fill any CMC holes in your hand. Now, you do need 6 different CMCs, and by nature of the game, you're only allowed to have 7 cards in your hand at the end of your turn. So you're going to probably want a way to make sure that you can have duplicates in this, so you're not sacrificing cards that you're willing to play now just to get ones with the appropriate CMC. So things like Reliquary Tower, Thought Vessel, Nezahal, the Primal Tide. These are all cards you're going to want to consider so that you can have an increased hand size, so you're not making that sacrifice of CMC versus immediate playability. Once you have the 6 different CMCs in hand though, all you got to do is get damage through. Now, Thamesis has flying, so that's pretty great evasion as it is. But you can also maybe make it a little bit easier on yourself. You can play things like Aqueous Form or Artful Dodge just to make them completely unblockable for the turn, or even something like Rogue's Passage to give them a blockability and just let them swing in. And get this, Thamesis doesn't even need to necessarily be combat damage. It just needs to be any form of damage. So you could play some equipment like Hankyu or Sure Strike Trident to be able to get the damage through regardless. Once you have that built hand of 6 different CMCs, we're going to call it the kill hand. Once you have that kill hand in hand, your opponents are going to have to really, really focus on handling a Thamesis, or else you can just take them off one by one over a couple turn cycles, eliminating the biggest threat at any given time. Whole bunch of fun. Love to see it happen. But we got a couple other ones to talk about, so let's move on to the next one. The next one I want to take a look at here is Etrata the Silencer, from the most recent time we went back to Ravnica. Etrata the Silencer is from the Dimir Guild, so 2 blue-black for a 3/5 legendary creature vampire assassin. Etrata the Silencer can't be blocked, and it has a nice little wall of text there. Whenever Etrata deals combat damage to a player, exile a target creature that player controls and put a hit counter on that card. That player loses the game if they own 3 or more exiled cards with hit counters on them. Etrata's owner shuffles Etrata into their library. So, how can we build our deck to take advantage of this ability? Well, right on the surface, you can already tell this is going to be probably a little bit tougher to pull off than a Thamesis, because not only do you need to hit your opponent once, you got to hit them thrice, and you have to have creatures that they can exile each time. If you have an opponent that has no creatures, you're not going to make any headway attacking them. If you have an opponent that only has their commander out, they can choose to move their commander to the command zone and no longer have a hit counter on it. If they have only tokens, the tokens can't get hit counters either because they cease to exist as soon as they are exiled. And even if you attack any of these people, you still need to shuffle Etrata into your deck. Kinda. Let's say you do find an opponent to attack that you can attack and exile one of their creatures. Her ability gets triggered, gets put on the stack, you exile one of their creatures, and you get to the step where you need to shuffle her back into the deck. Well, EDH has that built-in ability to kind of get around that by moving her to the command zone instead. However, every subsequent time you go to cast her, you'll have to pay the command tax. Since Etrata needs 3 hits on an opponent to eliminate them, that'd be her mana cost, so CMC of 4, times 3, which is 12, plus the 2 cost for the second time you're casting her from the command zone, and the 4 for the third time. So a total of 18 mana. She doesn't have haste, so she has to survive turn cycles in order to swing with them. You can see why it's getting a bit expensive and a bit kind of time consuming to do that. Now you could shuffle her back into your library to save on the cost of the commander tax, and if you have any sort of tutor effects, you kind of dig her back up, or just be at the mercy of drawing her again and then doing it again and again and again. But that's not great either. But I do have an idea to kind of take advantage of it, or maybe not take advantage, but make it a lot cheaper and a lot more accessible to pull this off. With her ability on the stack, you can use bounce effects, like let's say Unsummon or Boomerang, personal favorite of mine, to put her back into your hand. Then her ability will resolve. It'll still exile a creature, put a hit counter on them, but when it gets to the point where you need to shuffle Etrata back into her deck, she is no longer there in that zone to be shuffled back into your deck. She's safely in your hand just to pay her 4 mana. Next time, you could even do it later that main phase and have her ready to attack again next turn. This is kind of a sneaky way to kind of get around the whole thing. It's still a fair amount of hoops to jump through, but it definitely makes it a bit more manageable that you can do it on 3 consecutive turns to a particular player. And this is like the platinum achievement of EDH alternate kills. So if you could pull this one off, big kudos to you. That said, I do got one more for you. But before we get to it, if you've been enjoying what I'm saying so far, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button below. Love to see you folks join us going forward and, hanging out with us. Let's move on to the last one. Lastly, let me tell you about Phage the Untouchable. Phage the Untouchable is originally from the Legion set. It's 3 black, 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 very black intensive for a 4/4 legendary creature avatar minion. When Phage the Untouchable enters the battlefield, if you didn't cast it from your hand, you lose the game. Whenever Plague deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature. It can't be regenerated. And then the one we like, the line we like here, the last one, whenever Phage deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So, while killing a player with Phage is much easier than the previous two, only needing a single hit of combat damage, no real other riders or requirements, that means you're going to want to kind of use ways to make it unblockable. We already mentioned things like Rogue's Passage to kind of do that, or give it some form of evasion. However, that's not the major challenge with Phage, now is it? The major challenge with Phage is even getting it onto the battlefield in the first place without killing yourself in the process. You are in mono black though, so you do have access to a couple tools that we can take advantage of here. The first of which is Command Beacon, the one-time land that you can sack to bring your commander from the command zone to your hand, where you can then safely cast it without at risk of killing yourself. But you also have access to Netherborn Altar, which is a card that lets you put your commander from your command zone into your hand, exchanging life each time you use it, more and more life each time you use it. And being in black, you can have both of these in your deck and also play all of the great tutor effects. Let's say you're rich, you're just filthy rich, and you can go out and you can afford a vampiric tutor and a demonic tutor. Or maybe you're not as rich, but you have been playing the game a bit recently and you open a Grim tutor from M21, or you were able to pick one up because the price drops so significantly. Or even if you're poor, you have things like Dark Petition and Demonic Tutor, which can, not Demonic Tutor, Diabolic Tutor, which can also get things out of your deck for you. You can then load your deck with these tutor effects and these abilities to get Phage out of the command zone, tutor them up, bring Phage out, cast them, and swing. So if you can make it so that you're not casting Phage from the command zone and you're only casting from your hand, the kills come a lot easier with this one. But it's that initial jump, that initial hump, that initial crevasse you gotta cross that really adds a little bit of a challenge to it. So I want to hear from you folks at this point. I want to know what you folks think. Out of these three, out of a Thamesis, Etrata, or Phage, which one do you think would personally be the hardest to pull off? Or have any of you actually pulled off any of these kills before? If so, definitely let me know, because I am sure that any of these kills would qualify as one of those all-time memorable commander moments for you. Also, I know it's a bit off the table for this year, but my previous offer still stands. If and when the Bills win a Super Bowl, I will jump through plastic tables for this channel, assuming this channel still exists. So even if I'm 80 and I'm over here going, the new commanders are overpowered, I'll still jump through a table for you folks, though I might have to go to the hospital afterwards. I'd also like to give a huge shout out to my patrons. Next week, I am bringing the first of my monthly patron choice deck techs to you folks. So if that's something you want to have a say in, if you want to help guide the direction this channel goes with this deck techs, definitely consider going to patreon.com/chainofcommander and signing up. Every tier has a vote. Certain tiers have the ability to even nominate commanders for me to do deck techs on. So check it out, consider signing up, and beyond that, thank you all so very much for joining me today. I love hanging out with you folks. At this point, let's just enjoy the Super Bowl of the reigning Super Bowl champions and Tom Brady. All right, don't worry about the Super Bowl. I'll see you guys later. Take care.